To order. Nikki, would you call the roll, please?
Yep, Nikki Austin is present. Dan Barta.
Present.
Rich Debry.
Present.
Carrie Ellison. Present. Teresa Keen. Present. Cheryl McGuire. I don't see her. Dylan McGuire.
Here.
Bill Vosberg. Tim Wolf.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. We are in session. I'd entertain a motion to approve our agenda for this evening.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Dan and a second by Nikki by voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carried. Sorry, consent agenda. Any board member wish to remove an individual item from the consent agenda for consideration? Hearing none, we'll read them into the record. So we're approving the minutes of the Board of Education for January 10, 2022, approval of receipts and expenditures for December of 2021, approval of support staff resignation, Catherine Gilbertson, Abraham Lincoln Elementary custodian after 36 years in the district. Approval of support staff resignation, George Ellis, MHS custodian. Approval of support staff hiring, Joe Boshar, Northside Elementary custodian. Approval of administration resignation, Katie Landmark, Monroe High School interim assistant principal. Approval of professional staff retirement, Renee Tordoff, Northside Elementary kindergarten teacher after 17 years in the district and 34 as a teacher. And approval and acceptance of community donations from Redemption Church of Monroe, $385 to the Middle School Family Assistance Fund for gift cards and donations. And our gratitude goes out to both Ms. Gilbertson and Mrs. Tordoff for many, many years of service, not only to our district, but just as a teacher for Mrs. Tordoff. And a note about Katie. Katie's not leaving us. So it's a procedural event due to the one-year temporary contract she has filling the AP position for us. So with that, I would entertain a motion if anybody would like to make one.
So moved. I'll second. I know there isn't one on mine either, so.
Okay. All right, so I think I've got Terry as the motion and Teresa as the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Our next item is public comment. We do have one person registered for public comment, so just a quick reminder, public comment's a vital part of feedback to the board for matters of interest to the public. If you're unfamiliar with making a public comment before you're making a statement or a speech about your opinion on a topic pertinent to the business that the board conducts and within our legitimate jurisdiction. Because the board meetings are held in public and not a public meeting, there won't be a dialogue with you, but that means while the board may not respond, we'll take them into consideration as matters come before the board. We ask you to limit your comment to 5 minutes and start with your name for the record. So
Nathaniel Schexmatter.
come on up, or wherever you feel comfortable, you can.
Stand back here if that's okay.
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a homeowner. I'm a homeowner in Monroe. I have 3 kids, and I'm a little concerned about the facility referendum that was sent out to the mail. I appreciate you guys letting me know. I was looking this over, and I think the proposals are 86 million and 88 million, which in my opinion doesn't seem like much of a choice to me. And also doesn't seem terribly responsible either. As I look through some of the facility challenges here, there seems like there's a lot of things that should be taken care of right away. And I know right here it says that, right, our primary focus will always be to enhance student learning. At the same time, we have also been working hard to control costs and increase operating efficiencies. And I'm looking at these list of deficiencies in the school, and I'm wondering how, if what the board considers controlling costs is not actually addressing any of these things at all. Because I don't know about any of you, but as a homeowner and as just a member of society, I have a roof, I have a furnace, I've got cars. As soon as I buy a new furnace or I buy a new car, I'm already saving for my next roof or my next car, so that when the time comes, I have something to actually put down to pay for it, instead of waiting until I have to replace those items and I have an emergency that all of a sudden I have to scramble to try to get money to pay for these items. it kind of seems like the board hasn't really given much consideration to these items because now the recommendation is, hey, look, we need to raise taxes to pay for these items, and we're talking about $86 and $88 million that all of a sudden is sprung on the public, which, like I said, $2 million difference, that's not really a choice at all. And I guess I'm a little bit disappointed that we haven't been saving for these items. And I wonder that, you know, in 10 years, are we gonna have another thing that is gonna be important that we address that we haven't been looking down the road for, and we have to raise taxes again? I know plenty of people who are bad with money, and you do too, and they don't plan ahead for a rainy day. They don't have any sort of idea for, you know, what they're gonna do with their plumbing or their heating or insulation. They let their electrical go bad, or they don't take care of their car, and it's a crisis. And the difference between those people and what the board I perceive is doing is that I don't have to worry about their bad financial management or their lack of planning. Here, as a taxpayer and as a homeowner, I'm on the hook for these increases, right? I pay taxes along with all these other homeowners that are in the district, and every other business owner as well who's paying property taxes. So I guess I would wish the board would look into these proposals and reconsider some options. And I definitely think there are items in here that we need to address, but I can't imagine how building a huge facility, and maybe you have this expectation that if we spend $88 million and build a new facility that we'll see substantial increases in our graduation rates or our math skills or the literacy rates in our children. Because this is a substantial amount of money that we're gonna be on the hook for, and I think that that we should see something from that if you know the referendum does go through. So, you know, like I'd like to see, anyway, so I appreciate your time, but in brief, yeah, I'd like to see some different financial planning, even if it's just going forward, that we would start to save money for these projects that we know are gonna come up down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schnicksnyder. Okay. No other additional public comments here this evening, so we'll move on to old business. First item up is our report card report that we tabled for this meeting. So turn it over to administration to cover the most recent report cards.
I think I'll maybe slide out there so I can see everybody a little bit better. And so in November, buildings gave building reports on building goals, key action steps, and we were looking at data from the FastBridge information, which is our district assessment, but also our forward data, our ACD data, because we had access to that when those presentations happened. What we didn't have access to was the actual scores for the report cards, so our district scores, and then each building score. So tonight we'll go through each of those, highlight some celebrations, highlight some areas that we need to improve on, and then we'll talk about some key action steps that are happening across the district. And then I've asked Jeremy to highlight some specific things at the high school that they're working on to address some things there. So before we jump in, hopefully this works. Oh.
You tell me it's my head again, I'm gonna request a mercy.
The new one doesn't work. All right. There we go. I think we're good. All right, so before we get into the scores, I thought for people that don't know a lot about report cards, I'd just give a brief overview of how they come up with our score and the rating. So there's 4 priority areas that we look at for the report card. It's student achievement, which is ELA and math. There's growth, there's targeted group outcomes, which replaced, if people remember, closing gaps. And that's the lowest 25th percentile of students on your student achievement that's calculated. And then it's the on-track graduation. So those are the 4 main priority areas that is used to calculate the overall score. Thank you. The overall accountability score then rates you from fails to meet expectations all the way up to significantly exceeds expectations, and it's a 0 to 100 scale. So when we look at scores, it's going to be between 0 and 100, and then each building will get a accountability rating that they're given. Not factored in, but included in the data that we get is test participation, and then they look at student group level reporting, which breaks down student performance levels by student group. And then they're also looking at course and program data, and that includes advanced placement, dual enrollment, industry recognized credentials, and youth apprenticeships. And that area fits really well into our next conversation with launch and the things that we're going to be doing with that. And then it also looks at the arts, how many students participate in those areas that are listed up there. It's not calculating an overall score, but we do have to report that data. And this year is the first year that we've had to use that data in reporting it to the DPI. So I think it's going to be something that we have to do year after year. All right, let's talk about the report card. So this is the overall district score. So you can see at the top, it shares just the demographics. So we, as a district, we have about 15% students with disabilities, 44% economically disadvantaged, and then we're about 3.8% for ELL learners. Our overall score was at 59.7, meeting expectations. And then if you look at the weighted areas there to the right in the pie chart, you can see that it's split in 4 different areas, the 4 priority areas that I've talked about, and each is weighted a little bit differently, and that is based on economically disadvantaged percentage. So the higher the number of economically disadvantaged, the more growth is counted and the less student achievement is counted. And you'll see the theme across the buildings as I kind of go through each one. And when we look at that economically disadvantaged number, how much that growth percentage changes. So if we look at specific data to those 4 priority areas, we have student achievement that is above the state average in both ELA and math as a district. And then our on-track graduation rates were above the state average in everything. And that looks at 3rd grade English, predictors of success, 8th grade math, which we are significantly above the state average. Those are the 2 strengths. Obviously, you look up there, you see the 2 areas that we need to improve on, and that would be our areas of growth and our targeted group outcomes. So one thing to note about targeted groups, at 25th percentile, the bottom 25th percentile, it looks at that group of students for achievement, growth, attendance, and graduation separately. So you see each of those get a rating there, and it's really low. Definitely an area that we need to improve on. And that's going to be a theme as I go throughout the buildings. All right, this is Abe Lincoln. So we're going to start with our elementary. Very big celebration here. Abe Lincoln was 84.7, significantly exceeds expectations, so 5 stars. And if you look at their priority weights, area weights, something that's a little bit different about Abe is they did not receive a targeted group score because of the low number of students that took the assessment. They didn't have enough in that subgroup to actually calculate a targeted score. So their growth was over 50% that went into their overall, and then split between achievement and on-track graduation. About 50% economically disadvantaged, and then we've got about 14% disability. You look at the breakdown of the 4 areas, again, no targeted group score, but you look at the achievement, about at state average, but growth is what really stands out here. Lots and lots of growth for both ELA and math, well above the state average. Really strong, and then are on track, again, about at the state average in all those areas that we look at. So I'll highlight a couple things about Abe's score when we get into the action steps and talk about some of the details at the end, because as an admin team, we spent some time looking at, okay, Abe did really well in growth. What are they doing that we could possibly replicate and do across the district? So we'll highlight a few of those things. And I know Jenna's here, who was a big part of that success and working with her team, so she can talk a little bit about some details if you guys have questions about that. Go to north side, 80.4 exceeds expectations, 4 stars. They're pretty split. Their economically disadvantaged numbers is lower compared to the other 2 elementaries, so they're 27.5% on growth, and they're about 18% disability. We break down the 4 priority areas there. They're always really strong in student achievement, well above the state average in both ELA and math. Growth, again, pretty strong. I know Amy would talk that she would still like to see growth be above that. Specifically in ELA, she highlighted when she talked about some of their building goals. And then targeted groups, pretty strong, but definitely lower than achievement, and then on-track graduation above the state average and everything. We have Parkside score, 71.1, exceeds expectation category. Then you can see the big difference in this one of how much growth is part of their calculation because of the high economically disadvantaged percentage, which is close to 60%. And then you have almost 20% disability. And then what makes Parkside different is that ELL percentage, which is 12.3. Then if you look at the breakdown, state average wise, just across the board, ELA just for achievement and growth is just low. But on the flip side, celebration is math above the state average in both achievement and growth. It's always been that way, really consistent, have always been really strong in the area of math. You look at targeted group, certainly an area that needs improvement. And then our on track is about at the state average in all those areas. When we get to the middle school overall score was 60.9, which is meeting expectations. Demographics, around 45% economically disadvantaged, 14 disability, and then 3.7 for ELL. Again, growth is a big factor here, and looking at their overall score. And then you can see the breakdown. Student achievement, talked about it throughout. The theme is that we're at or above the state average. 2 areas that middle school has identified as areas of need. That's our growth area and our targeted groups. You can see how big a gaps there are for ELA and both math compared to the state average, and are definitely 2 areas that we need to address. We move to the high school. High school's overall rating was a 51, meeting few expectations. Their split there is a little bit heavy on the growth side, and their demographics is 38% economically disadvantaged, 13.8% the disability, and 2.5 on ELL. And then we see the breakdown of the 4 areas. We have overall achievement at or above the state average. And then you look at the same 2 areas in middle school where we struggled, which was growth and those targeted group outcomes, where we really scored poorly, which affects obviously the overall score, especially when we have growth calculated as a big percentage of the overall. On-track graduation, above the state average in both of those 2 areas that are calculated. So really it comes down to growth and targeted group outcomes. So just to share a little bit more data specific to the high school, before we kind of get some questions from you and talk about some specifics to those 2 areas. I wanted just to highlight kind of the trend to show on the ELA and math side of our student achievement data for students that achieve proficiency in advance and how that has looked over the last 5 years. And if you can see in 18, 19, we took a big dip down. So the trend line was actually going up before 16, 17. It reached the peak in 17, 18, and then we took a big drop, and then it's leveled off into around the 33, 32% there. Same thing on the math side, from 17 to 18, 18, 19, saw the big dip, and then leveled off a little bit, continuing to trend down. You can kind of see why our growth numbers are extremely low when you have that big of a drop for student achievement. And when we look at the data, I didn't say that at the beginning, they look at 3 years of data. So there's 3 years of data that makes up the student achievement, makes up the scores. So it prevents from big fluctuations, but it didn't prevent this. There was a pretty big jump that went from 42 down to 30, which obviously had a significant impact on the overall scores. The other thing I would say is this last year, because we didn't have a report card last year, they took out the 1920 data and they weighed the 1718 and the 1819 data more in the calculations. So that drop probably even hurt us more when you look at the overall percentage there.
So I'm looking forward to that drop going off there.
So let's talk a little bit about, I highlighted these celebrations and areas addressed throughout, but overall, achievement is fairly good across the board when you look at the district and all the different schools. We're either at or above the state average. That's not the issue. Our on-track graduation scores are above the state average. Elementary math growth is really high. And I would say with the exception of Parkside, ELA growth or ELA achievement and growth has been right around the state average. And then Abe Lincoln, we talked about their overall score, high growth, did really well. Those are the big celebrations, big takeaways, and then areas to address, growth and targeted score, both were two areas throughout that we need to improve. Also highlighted elementary ELA. And then really for prioritizing, probably math stands out even a little bit more than ELA when you look at middle school and high school data. Action steps. So what are we going to do? What are some things that we're working on to address these issues? One, I'll start out by saying our teachers are working their tails off. And they're hardworking, they're talented. They've done everything we've asked them to do and more. And we need to do some things differently, and I think it's up to us as leaders to help provide that leadership and what can we do differently that's going to get a different result in those two areas that are clearly just not meeting the mark. So one of the things that you guys have heard us talk about is our PLC work. It's a commitment that we've made K-12 in prioritizing 3 areas, and that is collecting data on our mastery standards. We call them the big rocks, what's most important for that course or that grade level, and being responsive to that data for student learning. Using a mastery management system, something we've used this year with Mastery Connect, and organizing that data to help look at the information and share that information as a team to make instructional decisions, and then guaranteed recovery time, which is basically the first level of response that we provide kids that need additional instruction on those key learning targets, mastery standards, big rocks. So those are the 3 areas that we've committed as a district and that we're continuing to work on throughout the year. In addition to that, some other big things that are happening in the district is on the ELA side, we have letters training, which is professional development for all of our 4K through 3rd grade teachers, including special ed, that is giving them some intensive ELA training that is really good, that we're excited about. Elementary ELA and high school English are going through curriculum cycles, so they're evaluating our courses, they're evaluating the resources we use, and looking at what areas do we need to improve there. On the math side, we've had a couple meetings with middle school and high school staff and the math departments, along with a K-12 meeting to start looking at our instruction, looking at CPM, which is our high school curriculum, identifying why we're getting those results and what are some things we need to do differently. And then it's under math, but it's really in all these areas is vertical alignment. I think a big E for us is to vertically align ourselves K through 12 and making sure that our curriculum is rigorous and that it's challenging students and that it's aligned. We just haven't done the work up to this point to really align that work in ELA and math, and that's going to help us in that area. And that really fits into that math course pathway conversation on what pathways do kids take as they move elementary to middle and high school with math courses. And then I listed up there Mastery Prep because I wanted Jeremy to talk a little bit about what the high school is doing with that assessment system and how they're using some of their time to help us hone in on some specific skills related to ACT and help us get better results. So Jeremy, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. First, I want to talk about, we knew before the report card even came out that this was about growth for us. We've always had at or above state average achievement, but growth was something that we knew that we needed to get better at. We knew that it was a 3-year rolling average, so we also knew it wouldn't happen immediately, but we knew we had to work at it. And what we found in looking at our data, not even the report card data, but other data we had, is it wasn't just growth of the students performed at the lowest end. It was all growth for all of our students, average students and students at the higher end too. They needed to grow. They're all part of that growth measure. So you have that overall growth measure, then you have the targeted group growth measure. So growth counts kind of twice in there on a report card. Because if you look on track and achievement, we're doing pretty good. It's really growth that is killing us. And yes, there was that one big dip, but that's not going to explain everything. We want that big dip to go down and then go back up to where we were. So our teams have been working really, really hard, looking at their own curriculum, making sure that their curriculum is aligned with what is assessed on the ACT, what they're looking for, and making sure that not only we're teaching those things, but students are learning those things. And then, after talking with other schools in the Badger Conference and what they're doing, right, because everybody has the same thing that they're dealing with, we knew that wasn't enough just to look at our curriculum. So we implemented a program called Mastery Prep, and it's been really, really good. It's everything online. It's an online platform, so kids can access it. They take practice assessments, practice ACTs, and from that, they get immediate results. And we've got some really good feedback from the kids saying, I love that. I love seeing my score. As soon as I hit submit, I see what I got. And then it breaks their score down for them. It breaks it down into every single item, every single skill area. And then it gives us what they call ACT Study Hall. So the kids can go into this and then they can practice their skills related to how they just did on that test. So that's what we have. Every Friday we have them working on this for a half an hour. And we've had them doing that since November. And we have been having them set goals on it. We've been, like I said, having the teacher help them and support them through that. So they do that. They took the first assessment in October. They just got done taking the second assessment last week. And then we compared, and I can say, thankfully, that as a whole group, grades 9 through 11, they went up about a full point already. So that's good and positive news. But also, we're not done with it because we have another 7 weeks until the ACT, and about another 2 months until the Aspire. So we're going to continue working through this, continue setting new goals. And then what the teachers have been doing is they also take that data by grade level and by course. They can put it into their courses, see if their courses are growing, but also then pulling back out into their collaborative teams and saying, all right, where do kids do well? Where do they not do well? Are we teaching that? Are we not teaching that? If we did teach it and we thought they had it, what's going on there? So we're really targeting not only just practicing this, but practicing changing the curriculum too. There's another part that the juniors just started right now because we're about 6 weeks out from the actual one, called SNAP course. And what that is kind of a boot camp, an ACT boot camp. Because it's not just practicing your skills, but this is a test like no other really, if you remember it. It's tips and tricks and strategies on how to take these tests. So I can use my daughter as an example. She loves English. She took the English test, got every one of the questions she answered correct, but she didn't answer about 40 of them. She spent all of her time just honing in, making sure they're correct. When you have 75 questions in 60 minutes, that's not going to work. And it turns out she has a pretty low score in English when that's her best performing area. So it's those kind of things that kids need to know. Like when you're reading a reading passage, you can't read the whole thing for comprehension and understanding. You have to fly through and pick through points because you will never get done. So that kind of stuff too, along with building skills, along with changing the curriculum are the things that we're doing. So I think we're on the right track. I mean, the only bad thing is that it's a lot of skill and drill in this program, and the kids don't necessarily like it. They did well. They really did. I got donuts for the top 3 homerooms who made the biggest growth. I got Quick Trip gift cards for, did you get one? Yeah, quick trip gift cards for the top 10 growth getters in each grade. And they're pretty excited about that. But then I asked for, what rewards do you want for the next time to the real one? And one of the biggest ones was to not have to do this. So it's a balance of that motivation and trying to get them to do it. Because I get it, who wants to do that, right? But it is helping. I mean, they've grown a point already. Our building goal is to grow 2 points at all, overall 9 through 11. So we're halfway there and halfway into it. So I think we can make it.
I'll give Jeremy credit. The entire staff, I would say, at the Monroe High School are invested in this work. Nobody likes to see scores when you put those in front of them. They're not happy with that either. They want to get different results. So I would say that if you walk into the high school and ask them, they're going to probably be able to tell you some specific things related to the ACT because it's an ongoing
I
conversation.
think we're more tuned into what the kids know and what they don't know than ever as far as the ACT skills.
Go to the next one. Since this isn't, I have an idea why it is, but we'll talk about it. So, we've got some things that we're working on this year and, how will we measure that work? I think Jeremy talked about some things they're doing to measure their progress, work they're doing with Mastery Prep. We do have Fast Bridge, our district assessment that we use and look at 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring, to be able to look at that data and see if it's moving and trending in the right direction. And then we've been really specific about our PLC steps and making sure that we accomplish things that we have in place for adult behaviors on what they need to do with their formative assessments, what they need to do for entering data, what they need to be able to show that they're working towards with the GRT work. So, holding them to accomplishing the goals that we've set. And then with Mastery Connect, our hope is that as we build out that system, that we've got data at the classroom level that we can look at specific to those standards and do some cross-walking in alignment with the ACT, the forward, to see, do we have holes in our curriculum? Are there areas that we need to be teaching that we're not teaching to address that are assessed on the ACT or the forward? All right, questions?
Out of the ACT, is there a score that's considered college ready?
It's across different areas, yeah. So they have a different score for every area: English, math, reading, and science. It's 18 for English as a junior. I believe math is 22, reading is 22, and science is 23. if I remember correctly. And then those go down 2 points each year. So if you go down to sophomores, it goes 2, and then freshmen 3.
You mentioned that Mastery Connect and the data, and I remember that intrigued me when you were talking about that. I think that really would provide, a level of data that you could action on, right? So what's the implementation timeframe for that?
This year it's a slow rollout, so we're kind of in a pilot stage right now, and the expectations have been very manageable and just putting 1 piece of data in for first try, 2 pieces of data for second try, 3 pieces of data for third try. We've got 1 building, north side, that year 3, right? You guys have been using this. They've got some grade level teams that are out there, and Katie's here. How often do you put data in there?
Every day.
Every day. So I was gonna say every week. Nice. So we have, we have some frequent users that we're trying to lean on to help show other staff of the value of being able to put data in there and use it to be able to make instructional decisions weekly at least, with their groupings and how they're providing, additional support for kids. Right now, I think we've got probably a few other groups and a few other buildings that are also using it a little bit more frequently. But we're a little bit way before we can say that we're fully implementing and we've got enough data in there to be able to look at data that aligns to, the ACT and the forward with our standards work. Our goal would be that the fall of next year that it's fully implemented and that we have got data probably more than one piece of data on each learning target, each of those big rocks, to be able to do the work around what instructional decisions we need to make and be responsive to it. So fall of next year is our target date.
To have all the data, did I?
Just data on those key
The keys.
standards, we call them big rocks, mastery standards for the course. So not data on everything they teach, it's just data on what's most essential for that course or grade level in that area. Some grades have done, a breakdown of 4 to 5 areas that they're monitoring. I know like the geometry, area at the math at the high school, I think they've picked 4 or 5 areas that they're monitoring more closely. So it's really dependent on the department, but it's not everything, it's really scaled down to what's most essential.
And the restrictions there are based on data availability or resources to get it in the system?
Time is the resource, right? To be able to input the data into a system and then be responsive to it. So it's time intensive because there's data that you're collecting from the kids, and you're putting it into a system, and then that data is then used in meetings and collaboration meetings that were happening. Obviously, all of those action steps probably aren't as moving as fast as what we'd like them to move, because there are days that operational, we're just trying to cover classrooms and make sure that we have a building that's functioning. So, I think that falls into the time piece, as teachers sometimes don't have their prep or enough collaboration during the week to make that happen.
I think one of the comments you had made, was it a couple weeks ago when we talked about the letters training, was that you were hoping to maybe accelerate that. Should we be looking at that and maybe instead purposing the time, like leaving that on the track it was on and using some of that time to make this?
I don't know, PD's professional development's pretty critical. It's, both are obviously super important. And I don't know, maybe Jenna and Amy can chime in because they're dealing with it at the building level of navigating how much time letters takes, but also how much time collaboration and PLC time takes. So you guys want to add anything on that?
I mean, it's what you said, they're both really important and they're both a part of the process. So it's kind of a balance between, they both have to happen.
But I mean, the priority is building the staff capacity in order to do the work. So I think that we are saying that letters has to be the priority because they have to build that knowledge to change their instructional practices, to get that growth. Because obviously our scores aren't where we want them to be for a reason. So I think the letters is the most important work right now.
But the elementary scores are typically higher than our middle and our high schools. So, I understand that foundational basis, but the handoff is not working between elementary to the middle and the middle to high. The numbers are keep going down and down and down. The trends are really poor. And something, I think, something's got to happen, something's going to change. Middle school dropped almost 13 points from the last score. The high school dropped 9, almost 10. Parkside dropped almost 10. A went up quite a bit, and Northside went up, or stayed about the same. But if you look back just 4 or 5 years ago, our district we had a district score of 80.4. Now we're at 59.7. We're a point and a half away from meeting a few expectations. If you look at the numbers, there's only 33 schools that are worse than Monroe on the school report card out of 420 public schools.
Yeah, I don't think any of us are happy with the results. And they're not going to change overnight either, right? I don't think we're going to expect to be able to quickly turn those numbers around. It's just sustaining some of this work and being committed to it. But yeah, I agree. I think a little bit with the elementary scores being higher than the middle and high school, that's a trend that you would see across the state. It's kind of how the scores and the ratings are set up. Because I will say, this is K-12 work, right? I don't think it's just a middle school and high school issue that we need to fix. And I think you were hitting on that, the handoff and that vertical alignment piece is critical. We all own it, because at the elementary, there is foundational skills that we need to do a better job of providing kids to help them be more successful when they do get to the middle school and high school. So I do want to make a point that it's K-12 work that we really need to do, and it's not just middle school and high school. And I do think it's critical for that vertical piece in the transitional periods where kids are moving from the elementary to middle to high. And what do we need to do differently? Because, yeah, the results,
I
they're not turning in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, what I think this needs to be a priority for the board. Maybe one of the ultimate priorities. I mean, we have referendums and that's important too, and we're handling that. Our budget, we do well. But this has got to be probably near the top of anything that we do. We're down a superintendent right now. You guys are stretched thin. I personally think what we may need to consider is hiring a consultant or a firm or something to come in and help us. Sometimes it's good to have outside viewpoint and saying, I don't think this is working as well as you think, or maybe this can be better. Because I think we have to, I know this is a gradual thing. I mean, it's not going to turn over overnight. I understand that. But I think we have to act with urgency. I don't question any administrator, any staff members. There's just not perfect harmony in this, and I think if we can get inefficiencies or figure out how else does it. I mean, I think it's important because I tell you the truth. You look at if I was moving here to Greene County, what schools am I going to look at? Right? I'm going to look at the buildings. I'm going to look at the programs. I'm going to look at their score. And Monroe's, frankly, with the exception of special ed, I think we're the premier around area for special ed. But if it's just regular, if I'm not knowing anything else, maybe I'm going to Glarus that has a 76 point whatever. So I think that my more message is to the board that, because I'm not going to be here in a couple months, but I think we're going to have to, sorry, but I think we have to, as a board, make this our top priority or one of the top priorities, and we have to stay on it, and we have to throw resources if it's needed. If we need another math teacher, let's hire another math teacher, or more aides, or different curriculum or whatever, but this has to be our top priority, in my opinion. So that's why I really wanted the focus to bring this to the board level, because I think that's where the ultimate focus has got to be from us.
Well, and when you talk about putting resources at something, is that something that we could, not we, but can we help with? Or do the teachers themselves have to be the ones that input the data? Like, are there files, and is this something that, someone could be paid to just sit and key and help so that it's not on your shoulders? I guess I don't understand the system enough to know how you're doing it.
No, I mean, it's really an individual teacher,
Okay,
duty that they,
so there's no way to really help alleviate that. Okay.
they're collecting data all the time, whether it's paper, pencil, a Google Sheet. We're trying to create a system, right, that gives us a little bit more consistency K-12 to be able to do some alignment down the road, and just give people a system if they don't have one prior. But it just is time intensive on individual teachers to do the work.
Okay.
I don't think anybody else could do it for them. Because one, you're entering the data, the data as you're doing it. It's just as part of being a teacher, really.
Okay.
Is this something they do outside of their class time, and they do it between, or is it during the classroom day?
Probably whenever they have a break, sometimes maybe, during their prep.
During their prep,
Yeah.
which they haven't been getting a lot of lately.
And
I
I think
mean-
the important thing, it's not just like my scores go in, there's some of that, but there's some of the building the rubrics, talking about proficiency, like how do we assign those scores? It can't just be like, I gave a test, you got a 97 and a 97 goes in. The teachers are collaborating as teams, and so they need their whole department. And for my department or my team to be successful, I need my 3 fifth grade colleagues, I need the special ed teacher that has 2 or 3 students in my room. I need the ELL teacher that has 2 or 3 students in my room. I need the Glenda McEwen reading teacher, so that we can actually have a team conversation about everyone that's a part of that. So it's not always just the actual, like, how come you can't get your numbers in there after school? It's really that collaborative process, that whole PLC piece to actually build, like, why is this 3 a 3 and why is this 2 a 2? And how are we gonna help the 2s become a 3? So it's a lot more than just that, put in the numbers quick, that's just kind of one piece of it.
So when we can, go ahead, Jeremy. I was just gonna say, when we ask them continually, and I think we all recognize that too, what they ask for is time. I mean, it's time, maybe not directly in front of kids to do some of that work, to collaborate around the work, we have a data analysis protocol that goes along with that system, that, they go through it, how do they do, who did well, who didn't do well, what are we gonna do about it? When is that gonna happen? How is it gonna happen? All that takes a ton of time, and they just don't have that built in. We don't have days built into the calendar, lots of stuff like that.
Well, and that's what I was thinking, maybe we have to be creative on how we approach this moving forward. And we can't invent more time, but maybe we can invent or help with other things to free up some time. That's, I think that's what we have to do. And I don't know what that means, but
Can I add something? So first, I just want to acknowledge what you said, Dan, and first, there isn't a person here on our administrative team that doesn't feel pressure related to these scores, right? We know that they're not good, we're well aware of where we're at, and it's something we talk about constantly. I also appreciate your acknowledgement of these guys because they are working extremely hard, and you bring up a consultant or looking at other options, and I will say we're open to anything, and we've done some of that already ourselves. We've invited consultants, we've worked through Solution Tree, we brought in Jack Balderman, who is the principal of a high school in Illinois. It was a PLC model high school, and turned that building around, and he has coached us. A lot of this work was in place. In fact, the last time we met with Jack was February of 2019. Is that right? Basically a month before COVID hit. And that's not to make an excuse, but our point is we're willing to do the work. We're putting in the time. There's a reason why we developed a district goal this year, and we kept pushing despite this being what we heard from our leadership cabinet today is probably the hardest year of their careers. We continue to push because we know this work needs to be done. I think what would be helpful for the board before you make a lot of decisions is you guys have had the benefit of maybe getting a 15-minute presentation here and a 15-minute presentation there. If you all would like to have a retreat or some opportunity to sit down and really dig into the work, because Jenna just gave you a glimpse of some of the challenges associated with what was asked. This is complex work. There's been a ton of resources that have been developed. I know Teresa's really involved and talks to Todd a lot about a lot of this work. We're happy to do it because honestly, we're proud of the work that we're doing right now. I personally wholeheartedly believe that we're on the right track. But as you said, Dan, it doesn't happen overnight. But I want the board to know that what we're doing is moving us in the right direction. And right now, if we're just going off of school report cards, understand why people would be asking those questions. Those questions should be asked. But we want an opportunity to discuss everything that's happening right now and then have the conversation about what's next. And Nikki, you asked about resources. There's absolutely some resource decisions that this district has to make going forward. I mean, that's part of the reason why we've talked about things such as elementary consolidation. Ron has said for a few years, not necessarily the consolidation, but the reduction of sections. In order for us to invest resources in areas that we desperately need, we need to make some tough choices about what we're currently doing. And so I think having the opportunity to have that conversation in the full context would be meaningful and helpful to all of you. And then we welcome that opportunity to talk about what we're going to do moving forward, because we're 100% invested in getting this turned around.
Well, Joe, I'll just emphasize, I guess, what Dan was saying. It's a priority to the board. You need to tell us if you need resources and what we can do to help you. Because I think what we're doing is we're kind of shooting ideas back and forth, kind of putting you on the spot, perhaps. But going forward, 2 things. I think it'd be nice to get an update every month, every board meeting, how we're coming along and what we're doing to improve test scores. And also, if you need help, if you need resources, we need an ask, right?
Because I don't know what I can do for you tonight as a board member if you don't ask. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak for Ron, but part of it is we know we're running a deficit budget and we're trying to, do the right thing. Ron does a great job of giving us resources when we ask and balancing that with, what our needs are. But ultimately, the work that needs to be done is happening right now, I believe. And again, if you could give me anything right now, I'd say give us an opportunity to spend some time with all of you so we can share what we're doing, so that together we can talk about what our next steps are. That would be helpful for me.
Joe, that's what I would say too. I mean, thank you, Phil, for that. But I think, like you said, we're doing the right things, I believe anyway, by the mastery prep, by the PLC work, by the collaboration work. We haven't been able to show it yet because we haven't got to the next test. So we need time to hopefully show that too. So, and the one thing, I think that gives credit to, we all been saying we need to focus on growth, is that you asked like why that massive drop 4 or 5 years ago. The report card added in growth. It was never there before. So that's a big deal. We were just focused on achievement, which we've always been good in, and on track to graduation. So they added in the metric growth, which is something we need to work on clearly.
No, Todd won't do it, so I'll celebrate him. I think Todd's doing some work that's long been needed in this district, and that's no slight at anyone else. I think Todd has come in with a level of enthusiasm, passion, and urgency that we've desperately needed, and digging into some things, and it does take time, and we're talking about adult behaviors and teaching in a different way. We've got great staff. They work their tails off, but what we're doing isn't working. That's the bottom line. And so helping people understand that we need to shift from what we're doing to something different takes reps, it takes practice. And that's what this plan is about this year. And Tim, you asked the question, why does it take time? Part of it is building that capacity. It's like when Dan and I coach 7th grade basketball and we say, hey, we want you to cross over and handle the ball like this. They can't do it right away. It's not because they don't want to. My God, they want to be good. They're not quite there. But it's the same thing with building these skills. They're so invested in the work and they want to do it. They've never done it this way before. And so part of it is these guys coaching, and I don't mean just the principals. Katie's a part of that, other teacher leaders. We're working on it through the professional development, and sometimes it takes time. But we fully anticipate that when we get to the beginning of next school year, we're going to be in a heck of a lot better place than where we're at right now. But again, we're open to feedback, we're open to comments, but we would love to talk to you guys about it because we are passionate about this work.
Well, and I would welcome that, because I hope I didn't offend anyone. I wasn't trying to minimize the work. I was actually trying to find ways we can help, because I know you're all stretched to capacity, so it's.
And I don't think this is one of those things that you can work harder and just,
No.
it's not that, right? It's taking fresh looks at things, doing things differently. And maybe sometimes not doing more, right? And focusing attention on those 2 or 3 things that are gonna move the ball.
Yes.
I mean, I agree. I think if we can, some kind of retreat is a good use of our time. I agree with Dan that this is probably the most important thing that we have in front of us as a board, right? Like our kids are our most valuable resource, and we owe it to them. And so I think some of the things you guys are doing are fantastic. I wholeheartedly agree that we have amazing teachers and incredible people, and especially this year, it's hard to say, let's do more, because they are strapped, they are here, right? I know. But I do think, I'm hearing teachers excited about this letters training, and I'm hearing a lot of the things that they're excited about. And I also know that picking materials and coming to us and saying, here's our next materials isn't adequate, right? Because really, we know science, research tells us that coaching and mentoring and consistent training in the classroom is what's going to impact our kids and our teachers, regardless of the materials that we use. And so I think us having a discussion on what does that look like long-term? How do we sustain that, right? Because I'm guessing a lot of teachers were trained in, literacy and have moved on.
Well, everyday math is the perfect example. The reason why our math scores are so good year after year after year is because the implementation, the professional development, the sustained attention to it was really.
This letters training, in addition, and they're doing it on top of everything else, but I think that tells us too that they want this professional development, right? They're looking for this. And so I think any plan we have, what does that professional development look like? What does that coaching and sustained learning look like? How do building leaders help build in those instructional practices that we know are important? And so I think if we have those conversations as a board to know how we can best support you, I think that's going to be critical moving forward. And I think Todd mentioned that vertical piece, right? Like, so right now I saw elementary is looking at ELA and so is high school. Well, that's not going to work if we have it disjointed, right? So we may have to look at that and evaluate that differently to make sure we have a good K-12 vertical approach to what we're doing in all areas. So I appreciate all the work everybody's doing, and I appreciate, on top of everything you have this year, all the work that you're doing, because it's hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. And echo the sentiments. I know it's got to be a focus for us, and we want to make sure that we give you guys everything you need to be successful, because it's what our kids deserve. And I'm hearing from the board that we'll commit to putting some time into it, and we'll work to schedule those sessions and just work together to try to get us where you'd like us to be.
Good. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you, Rich, for putting this on. I mean, I came in here and now I'm hopeful, you know. I mean, you look at the numbers and the numbers are bad and scary, and I didn't know that growth, you know, those type of things, but you see that. But now, I know that you guys were doing a lot of work. Now I understand it better. You know, I don't understand much of it. You know what I mean, the intricacies and all that stuff. But what I'm saying is I hope the message from us was that you need help, we get it, and I appreciate you putting that on the board.
Any additional questions on report cards for administration? All right. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about launch then.
That's the exciting part. That's way more exciting. Way more exciting. So launch, like I just said, is something super exciting. It's something new, but I think something that we need. And there is the academic side of it. There's still academics to this, but there's also the engagement part of it and the relevance part of it. And that's really the big driver, at least for me, in the vision of this. But let me go back to the beginning first. So earlier this year, right at the beginning of the year, I think, Todd, we were approached by John Bauman and Kim Markham from County Brands and the foundation, actually, wanting to do something. They were noticing something within their company, kind of an explosion or increase in their business analytics area. And they had, I think it was 12, Tim might correct me, 12 business analytics or data analysts that were, in John's mind, some of the best in the country, if not further reaching, and wanted to co-op with us and partner with us and do something where they could provide some resource of those people and interact with our students, but didn't quite know what that was. The goals being our students would come out of high school with something different than any other student that comes out of high school. And in typical, I guess, John fashion, he wanted to build something or have us build something that would have people say, wow, look at Monroe, I need to be there, which I think we can all get on board with doing that. So Todd and I started looking around and seeing if somebody had anything like this for high school. We weren't having a whole lot of success at first. We were finding, a lot of college programs for this, not a lot of high school. And then Todd reached out to some contacts that he had, pointed them in another direction, and he found two districts, bigger districts. Minnetonka, Minnesota, I believe was one. They had a program called Innovate, was that it?
Vantage.
Vantage? Vantage.
Close.
Close. We're not doing that one, so I can get that one wrong. And then we went to Elmbrook, which is over by Milwaukee, and they had launch. So after going to launch, we were just kind of blown away by what it is. And what it is a very different way of thinking about learning and thinking about high school. I think it's long needed for us to reimagine high school and how it can be done. So it creates career pathways, career strands. And within that career pathway or strand, we identify classes that we currently teach, and we have teachers that teach them in the strand, but we partner with community businesses, and they have mentors that they provide. So a caveat of it, I'm just talking, so if you want to move through, you can if you want. A caveat of it is we're not teaching different mastery standards or different learning targets. It's the same ones For instance, if we have English 11 as part of a strand, and we identify mastery standards and learning targets and skills that line up to the ACT, they're also gonna get them in launch. They're just gonna get them a different way than is done in the classroom. So that'll be very different. And how they're gonna do it is, the business has projects that they will be giving to us and to the students and the teams that will be working on it. So the way it was described to us is every business, every department maybe within a business has a list of projects they need to do. And oftentimes they can't get to some of their lower end projects. So if they have 1 through 10, that 8, 9, and 10 on the list often get kicked down the road, but they could give them to our students with that business mentor to work on, to complete, and give our students some real world, real life experience, contacts, everything that goes along with that. And learning the skills and the mastery standards that we had. So that sounded really awesome. And after we got into that, we did a trip over there to Elmbrook, and they have an amazing facility, and it was like something I guess I've never felt before in high school. It wasn't a high school, it was like a business setting, kids sitting around at tables with business mentors, with their teachers, working on projects, whether they were in person with the person or Skyping in. It was like I guess a business setting is what it was. That's the best way to describe it. It wasn't like high school. So why do that for us? You know, I mean, other than John and Kim are pretty good people, we're looking at it as it's that relevancy and that engagement piece. It's meaningful work. One of the things that I get asked sometimes by students, and I know teachers do as well, is why do I need to do this? Whenever in my life will I need to know this? And even though our teachers are working their tails off to change what they do in the classroom to make it relevant, to show them that it is useful in life, it's not the same. I mean, we're still a high school, it's still a classroom. They try to provide that within the classroom, but it's not real world. We can talk about, so our answers to that usually are, why do I need this? Why do I have to do this? Are, well, you need a diploma, you need to be a well-rounded individual. It's part of the graduation requirements that the board sets down. Even all the way to, well, we all have to do things that we don't want to do. Those don't sound like very good answers, really. So launch gives a different way of doing that. I mean, if kids can be working on real life, real world problems, if they can get business credentials, if they can get business contacts, possible dual credit opportunities, and also see if they like a career or a pathway, that to me is huge. These things right here, thank you for putting that up because it just reminded me. So it's not just about the academics. Yes, we have our mastery standards. Yes, we have our learning targets. And yes, we have our ACT skills. But it's about this, and what most businesses and people in the business world will call this our soft skills. Every time we talk to somebody out in the community about what they need from our students, it's never about the academics. It's always about the soft skills. They need to show up on time. They need to work hard. They need to critically think. They need to problem solve. Well, that's really what the focus of this program is on, as much, if not more, than the academics, are these things: the technical skills, the career development, the professional literacies, the business acumen, the human skills. How do they collaborate and work with other people? Those kind of things. And that's what our kids are going to get along with the academic. So that's really, really cool. Thank you. 2 strands. So where do we go from here? We are going to implement next year 2 strands. We're going to start a little bit smaller. Business analytics, and you can see the courses associated with them up there, and our major partner there will be Swiss County. And then media solutions, and that is the courses we have there, along with a new course that you all approved, which is social media for business. And the partner for that right now is going to be the school district itself, because we have a lot of things that we deal with, that Jenny deals with, that we can help support. And many people don't know, we're also working on a rather large project with the county foundation to possibly get a pretty large scoreboard. And we're gonna need to fill that with media. So if we have students that can work on that stuff, that will be amazing, because I don't think Jenny wants to take that on all by herself. We can also free up some classes. So we talk about resources in the high school and how we can help kids. Right now, we have 3 sections across all year long of a yearbook that's taught out of English. Well, we can throw a yearbook in as a project, and then free up a teacher for 3 sections of English to help out in English 9, English 10, or wherever needed there. So that should help out quite a bit too. I'll go to the next one. This one? Yep. think I talked about this, but I'll just explain it a little bit, just so you get an idea. How we plan is, it's weird, so go with me on this. It's hard for a typical standard educator to wrap their head around this, including myself, because it's messy. It's not like super linear. So they're gonna have 1 hour in the morning along with flex to do a strand. So for example, business analytics will have first hour and flex. And then in that strand, they're gonna take on projects. 2 to 3 projects per year, so about 1 per trimester, per group. So if we have 25 kids in a group or 24 kids in a group and you have 4 kids, in the class, 4 kids in a group, there could be a project for each one of those groups per trimester. That's how many projects we need. Peel back to the other one, Todd.
Yep.
See if I forgot anything there. Oh, I'd already talked about the certificates and college credits. No, we're good.
I think one thing I'll add on, when you look at those 2 strands, you see that it's mixing English with business, with art, or math with business. And teachers have started to work together on some of this. We've had a few meetings at the high school, and how I think it's awesome for our collaboration that we've got teachers from different departments in the room together collaborating on one thing that's going to provide something for our students. I don't think I can think of anything that we've ever done like that before.
Never. And thank you for cluing me into that, because that's the one thing I want to tell you. So that hour and that flex, they're going to do all those classes at the same time through the projects. So there's going to be some explicit instruction on things that they need, like maybe graphic design capabilities for whatever project they have, or obviously they're going to have to be taught some statistics to help with the business analytics. But a lot of it will be happening just all intertwined in the project, so that's how they're going to get that.
So they're in it for the whole year?
The whole year.
And then in that case, the bottom one, they're doing English 11, advanced writing, social media, all those things throughout. And that counts for all 3 types
And
of
then on
classes.
top of that, there's a mentorship half credit, which are the soft skills, that circle you saw. So it's kind of the soft skills, business skills.
Will they have some time at the partnering business then, off-site?
Yes, so how it works in Elmbrook, and this is kind of the messiness of it, we haven't gotten into the development of what the course actually looks like. That's mainly gonna be this summer, we're gonna spend some time with their teachers. But they have their kids, there's certain days that the mentor comes to, we're hoping to do it here, right? Have the 2 strands down here, so it's kind of like their place, where it's not in the high school, it's something different. But the mentor comes to them 1 day a week, and then the kids or the groups, depending on what is needed, are out at the places some of the times too. And then there's classroom time too.
I think that'd be good.
Yeah. Some of the projects, this is just some of what Elmbrook gave us. They do some research, they do some analysis, planning and strategy, design and development. They do a little bit of everything, depends on what the company needs. And the cool part is, it's really changing the teacher from being the expert in the room to being kind of a colleague and a guide. So one of the things that the teachers over there talked about was the big shift they had to make was when a kid said, "Hey, Mr. Parity, how do we do this?" And he's like, "Great question. Let's figure that out." And then they would go online and figure out how to get certified in whatever they needed, some kind of data system or some tool. So that's how they work together along with the business mentor. So they use problem-solving skills to figure it out, because I imagine on a job, when you don't know how to do something, you gotta figure it out. Next one, Todd. Okay, timeline. So we've already identified our 2 different strands, the courses within them. The teachers are going to teach them, business partners to a degree. We're starting right now to market the program and recruit students. We just had a group of students go over Thursday, and look at the program, and they were as excited as I've ever seen students when Todd and I met with them today. They wanted to, no offense to us, we had a really good plan on how to market this, and they said, let us do it. They really did, didn't they?
They're like, Mr. Jackson, we don't really watch anything you put out for us.
We don't watch your emails, we don't watch your videos.
Just let us do it.
Yeah. So
It was awesome.
They thought the biggest thing was to let them do it, let them do word of mouth. They actually themselves have asked for a flex time with all incoming juniors and seniors, so they can talk to them about this program. They set goals of, I was really, because I'm hesitant on this a little bit, just to pull it off. I was thinking 25 to 30 kids, they wanted 80. We thought they could do it. We
awesome.
negotiated, and I think we're down to 40 to 50 right now. But it's super cool to see their excitement with that, you know, and we talked about, this isn't for everybody, right? The messiness of this isn't for everybody. There's gonna be some kids that say, no way, I want somebody to tell me exactly what to do and go down the line and I'll finish that and I'll do great at it. Going into this, it'd be like, I don't know what you're gonna do yet, because I don't know what the project is yet. So it depends on that type of person, but I think it's super valuable to do that. Course information night is next Monday. Students start selecting courses that second week in February, 7th through the 11th. And then we will know how many kids we have in there. We're gonna pre-populate that in their schedules. Going out into the community, talking to businesses, this will not be a problem, we don't think, because businesses are really asking for help. So Joe has a meeting set up with Eric Harper, myself, and I think Todd tomorrow, a school community partnership meeting with business leaders to talk to them about this and some other things and what they need. And then there's a lunch and learn on Wednesday with Kara and myself. I think she said that there's 50 members of the chamber gonna be there.
Yeah.
So, and I'm gonna talk, actually Kara's gonna talk mostly because they're probably sick of me talking about it. But we're just gonna talk about that too and the opportunities. So we envision many more people wanting to be involved that can be involved. But then the next step already this spring is to start what's our next strands and pathways for the following school year. There's lots of different strands. If you want to go on the launch website, just Google launch, there's all kinds of different strands available, and there's some really cool opportunities for our kids. Some we'd have to re-envision what the school looks like because we don't have spaces to do some of that stuff, but some we already have. So super excited about this.
This will start next year.
Next year, this coming, 22,
And it's
23.
for like juniors and seniors?
Juniors and seniors. We do want to show you, do you have time?
Rich, do we have time?
Yeah, go ahead.
A quick video that really pulls all this together about why we do this. I think it's honestly important to see because we want, what I got out of it is we want people, families and students to look back at high school and say, wow, I really remember that and that was super meaningful rather than, well, that was a hoop I had to jump through to get to X.
I'll add, like you mentioned Kara, I think Kara's gonna be a big part of this. I know that you guys are part of bringing Kara in and a resource.
Thank you.
Who obviously is a big part of our SOAR work, but she's already been out working with businesses and messaging some of this and building that excitement around this program because it's gonna start with 2 strands. But I think pretty quickly we're gonna look at, additional strands that we think are gonna be beneficial to the community when we think about future teacher strands, the health field, manufacturing. I think there's some areas that we could.
Engineering, manufacturing,
We could
construction
do-
trades, all kinds of stuff.
Yep, I think there's a lot of potential here to really make this something that maybe all of our students at the high school eventually experience.
Yeah, that would be the goal, is to get as many kids in a pathway, at least they can see what they don't like at the very minimum, right? And it gets a real world experience and contacts. Pathway.
There's a puzzle about our memories of experiences. Let's call it the Disney paradox. And if you've been to one of the Disney theme parks, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. If we were to sample your happiness level at, say, a couple of dozen different moments over the course of your park visit, my guess is that in a majority of those moments, you would actually be happier sitting on your couch at home. It's less humid there, less crowded. You can get a hot dog for less than $10. But as we reflect on our park visit, it might be one of the highlights of the year. Why is that? Well, psychologists know that our memories of our experiences are not really fair. We don't just take an average of our moment-by-moment sensations when we reflect on our experiences. Rather, we remember snippets, scenes, moments. And in particular, there are 2 moments that we disproportionately remember. The peak of the experience, which is either the best or the worst moment, and the ending. So when we look back on Disney, we tend to remember the roller coaster moments, the sweet family moments, the surprises, but we don't recall that moment-to-moment sweatiness and irritability. Now, when we talk about creating better experiences for the people we care about, whether that's our customers, our patients, our students, or our kids, what this means is that we're really talking about creating better moments. Great experiences hinge on peak moments. But there's a problem, because we're not trained to build peak moments. We're trained to fix problems. We think that to create better experiences, we take a survey and we collect all the complaints and criticisms and we fix those things. But fixing problems doesn't make people happy. Fixing problems whelms people. Not overwhelms, not underwhelms, whelms. If you drive down a stretch of the road with no potholes at all, you're not ecstatic, you're whelmed. If your cable TV functions exactly as it's supposed to, you're not happy, you're whelmed. So if this is the reaction that we want from people, we need to start building peaks. Let me give you an example. There's a hotel in Los Angeles called the Magic Castle. You're seeing scenes of it here. It's not a lot to look at, is it? The amenities aren't that great. Would you be surprised if I told you this is the #2 rated hotel in Los Angeles based on thousands of reviews on TripAdvisor? How could that be true? There's a phone by the pool. It's cherry red. You pick up the handset, you hold it up to your ear. Someone answers and says, "Popsicle hotline, may I help you?" You can order up grape or cherry or orange popsicles delivered to you at poolside by someone on a silver tray wearing gloves like an English butler, all for free. There's a snack menu where you can get Cheetos and Cracker Jacks and cream soda, all for free, just for asking. There's a board game menu. There's a movie menu allowing you to check out things for free. There are magicians doing tricks in the lobby in the mornings. You could even drop off your laundry. They'll have it done, washed, and folded by the end of the day. And now you're starting to get a feel for how this unassuming place could be the #2 hotel in LA, just ahead of, you see that? The Four Seasons Beverly Hills. What this teaches us is something so important. Great service experiences are mostly forgettable and occasionally remarkable. People are willing to forget a lot of average, a lot of mediocrity, as long as there are some moments that are special. But those moments don't create themselves. And if we don't invest in those remarkable moments, look at what we're left with. If we want to improve the experiences people have, we've got to stop fixing potholes and start building peaks.
So then I need to talk about this last thing, this young lady who is an example of these remarkable moments. There was this lady here. This is from Elmbrook. She was in the business analytics strand there, and she got partnered up with Milwaukee Tool. She never knew what they did, just they made tools. It's right down the road from their high school, and most kids don't even know it. They just think, like I said, they make tools. Well, their problem was they had a return problem. They had people would buy tools and then return with them, and they didn't know what to do with all these tools, if they should resell or what. Her and her group developed this program, which was a tool rental program. So they came up with this themselves as high school students with a mentor. They said, let's package all these tools and then package them as, hey, I need to rebuild my bathroom. Well, here's everything you need to rebuild your bathroom. And it's a huge success, and they're still doing it today. Bathrooms, flooring, whatever. So they solved that problem and created a solution for them, and they're still using it today. This girl went on to Butler University and majored in business analytics with a digital media background. She's coming back to work for Milwaukee Tool. She had no idea what Milwaukee Tool was without this program. That can be a peak for our students. That's it.
Awesome. Any questions? I know Teresa and I had an opportunity to go and see some of those kids in action, and some of the takeaways from that for me was just how engaged those students were in the process. And even some of the projects that maybe they weren't as excited about, they were engaged, and they were learning critical skills. Like you said, you don't know what you're going to walk into, and your instructor becomes your collaborator. I think you build some very key critical thinking and resilience skills as a part of that process that I think is resonating with our students, as exampled by the response you guys are getting. So I'm excited to see some of this come here. So
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm thrilled to hear that the students were as excited as we were. That's really exciting.
Thanks, guys. Okay, so next item on the agenda, we've got confirmation of COVID guidelines for athletic and after-school activities. Just real quick, we'll run through a quick COVID update. Let's see. So today, our average per day new case count is 41. Last time we met it was 23. We did peak at 50 on the 20th. That was 4 days ago, so that's a bit of good news that we've hit a peak and coming back down. That was for the district. The county numbers are 86 a day, peaked at 105 4 days ago, and we're 62 a day the last time we met. Greene County DHS data, our burden is now at 3,270. Last time we met was 1,188, and that is off the chart compared to the largest part of the Delta surge. Vaccination rates for Greene County ticked up slightly, 64% first dose, 61% second dose. SSM's details they're providing. Currently, their hospitalized patients for COVID, 75% are unvaccinated. 100% of their ICU patients in for COVID are not vaccinated, and 38% of all hospitalized patients are there with COVID-19 at this time. Our current COVID positive student count is down to 54 today, down from 91 on Friday, so that's a good trajectory. We hope that continues. Quarantines are down to 75. Our staff COVID positive numbers are down to 7, also down from 15 over the weekend, so another positive change. There was a lot of effort that went into keeping our doors open, and I think it's our focus has continued to be maintaining in-person learning. And I think at this point, I really need to take the opportunity to express gratitude from the board and the community for the efforts of everyone in the district that has put in their time and their energy to be flexible, to keep the doors open, to serve our students and our community. And without everyone working together, it was a all hands on deck in those schools to respond and support vacancies that were as a result of sickness or quarantines. We wouldn't be able to fulfill our mission without those extraordinary efforts. So I'm proud of the additional effort to keep our doors open, but I am worried about the strain of meeting the commitment to our students and community. I'm worried that it's wearing on our staff. So we've asked a lot of our staff, and they have answered with distinction during the entire pandemic, but most certainly have gone above and beyond with the Omicron surge that we're going through right now. So again, I feel like it's coming at a cost to the emotional well-being of our staff, and we need to be sensitive to that. Just wanted to reassure the board recognizes that, and we'll be working with administration to determine the best way to acknowledge those efforts and ensure that we're caring for your wellness in a meaningful way as well. So in the interim, we continue to ask that you do the best you can, bend, don't break, and just thank you, sir. Thank you for everything that you guys do to continue to keep the doors open, and please care for each other and continue to care for yourself, just as a message to our staff. So the work before the board for this item is going to be reviewing the guidelines for athletic and after-school activities. These were previously approved by the executive committee in response to our transition to the high COVID response plan. And I'll turn it over to Joe to quick walk through what that entails.
Sure. So you all saw in the board packet what we've been using since the executive committee approved these recommendations. We purposefully wanted to make them simple so people could remember what we're doing, and it comes down to this. While we're in the heightened COVID response protocol, that the mask mandate for schools applies to all who attend events. We'll make sure that we have appropriate signage and PPE available. Students that are engaged in practice, performance, or competition will not be required to wear a mask during that activity. We felt that was important because I think we've learned over the last year and a half of watching enough high school athletics with a mask mandate that it didn't really work. Most of the time, kids were pulling it down. Some kids and some teams were more compliant than others, and it just put everybody in a bad situation, and times people were getting upset. Not to mention that we didn't have any evidence that there was any kind of transmission that was occurring during competition. So based on that, we decided to not require a mask while kids are actively engaged in practice, performance, or competition. But we are asking students and coaches and all personnel that are sitting on the sidelines, observing, sitting on the bench, whatever it may be, to remain masked. And that's really it. We would ask that these guidelines remain in effect as long as the heightened COVID response protocol is in place. And certainly would be happy to answer any questions you all have.
I have a question, Joel. So spring sports will start, soccer,
Track.
what are we thinking for observers?
I'm sorry, what's that, Phil?
What are we thinking for observers, fans?
Yep, so right now our plan calls for only when we're inside of a facility. So outdoor activities would not be subject to these rules. So not to mention, we're hopeful that, as Rich just mentioned, that we're starting to plateau and hoping that we're going to turn a corner here soon. But even if that's not the case, outdoor activities aren't subject to the masking mandate.
And can you remind me, we had a certain level, the heightened goes away, what is that, like 35, what was that?
35 over a 2-week rolling average, yep.
And where are we now? 41? Is that what
Current
you
at
said?
78 is our average at this
Alright,
point.
so we're coming down, but we're a ways away.
Yep, it'll take a little while to work through the average. And the reason the plan was developed that way is to make sure that we give ourselves a grace period. If our community is going through a period of transmission of COVID, we want to make sure that before we move back to a mask optional plan, that we've hopefully cycled through the worst of the surge.
Questions on the co-curricular masking guidelines? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
So move.
Second.
I heard Teresa beat you to it, so I got a motion by Tim and a second by Teresa.
Carrie.
Or, sorry. Well, I heard you both at the same time.
Okay.
It doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. This one's in as a roll call vote, so we'll go ahead and roll through that one as it's a COVID protocol change, so. Would you call the roll, please, Nikki?
Yep. Nikki is a yes. Dan?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Oh, none of those page there. Hang on. Terry? Yes. Teresa?
Yes.
Cheryl? Yes. Dylan?
Yes.
Phil? And Tim?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Okay, we're on to discussion and potential action on the girls hockey co-op. I don't see Jeff here, so you gonna walk us?
I guess I'll take it. I thought Jeff was going to be here, but I'll take the lead and I'll ask Jeremy to jump in if there's anything you want to contribute. Certainly, this has been an issue that the board has discussed previously. Basically, we are a member of the Beloit Girls Hockey Co-op. We are currently up for renewal. The renewal process usually takes place every 2 years. So this would be an agreement for the 22-23 and the 23-24 school year. As we previously discussed, there's been some challenges. At this time, we currently have one student athlete who's participating in that co-op program. She happens to be right here. We won't make Marley stand up and give us a speech because she would not be happy with that. But right now we have one student, and the family's been pretty clear about their stance on where they would like their student athlete to play and participate. To be clear, they would prefer that Marley's have the opportunity to play with the boys hockey program. There's a lot of issues that are involved in this issue with the girls hockey co-op, not the least of which is that it's a bit of a distance to travel there, and the practice times are challenging as well. Ice time is hard to come by, is my understanding. I'm not a hockey guy, but I certainly understand that issue. And when we have a student athlete who's getting up in the morning, who's just recently received her driver's license and driving at 4 or 5 in the morning to get to practice, That's a bit of a challenge, not to mention practices that occur after school. She sometimes arrives late. And I don't have to go into all the details about it, but the bottom line is there's some logistical problems with getting to and from practice and competition. I think Jeff did a really nice job in the write-up identifying some of the issues, including any students that would be subject to this decision in the future. We're a few years out before anyone would be impacted. I think one of the biggest questions that the board would have to ask is, how does this impact girls' hockey participation in the future? And I think the reality is, as of right now, we have one student athlete who's directly impacted by this decision. Is it possible that down the road, we could have additional female student athletes that would like to play hockey, that would like to be involved in a co-op? And the answer to that is it's certainly possible. But I think given everything that we've learned about the situation at this point, administration and Jeff would like to recommend that we do not renew the co-op agreement, and we step away from that co-op at this time. And I'd be happy to do my best to answer any questions that you might have, and between Jeremy and myself, hopefully we can answer those.
So my question is, if we go away from the co-op program, the student would automatically be able to play with the boys, or does the WIA have to approve that?
No, the WIAA has made it clear that if we're not actively involved in a girls' hockey co-op program, that she would automatically be eligible to play within our boys' program.
It's like that in every sport, like wrestling, they have a girls' tennis team, they can play on the boys' tennis team, cross country, all those things.
We don't offer a comparable, right?
And then at that point, the reimbursement cost would go away.
Well, there's still fees for boys' hockey
Right,
program,
but we wouldn't be
right?
paying mileage, and we wouldn't be
Correct.
paying overnight,
Yes.
and we wouldn't be paying things that we haven't paid over the last 9 years.
And there's no restrictions to re-entry into the co-op?
Yes, I mean, we don't know that for sure, but it's not guaranteed that they'd let us back in.
Right, so that's the one potential downside, right, is the challenge is that if down the line, say 4 years, we wanted to revisit and join the co-op, they might say, thanks, but no thanks. You were part of the co-op and you opted out. The one thing I would say is I think as we've navigated a number of issues with the co-op, I think we've been very professional and considerate of that team and their staff, and making sure that we didn't do anything to jeopardize the postseason play of that team. And I'd like to think that we'd be in good standing with that program should we want to revisit it down the line. But again, I think our perspective is, in thinking of the one student athlete that we have in front of us, I think we want to make a recommendation that's supportive of her and her family.
Hopefully they would understand, and that scenario was a what if. We don't know.
And again, I'll give credit to Jeff. He's done a nice job of communicating with some of these families, and we're not quite sure what their intention is for participation in hockey in the future. But I think based on all the information that is available, we feel comfortable with our recommendation.
Well, I'm the other not a hockey guy in the room. So, what age would they start playing for the co-op then? Or what year?
It's a high school program, and Gotti, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, it starts at freshman, is that correct?
Through 12.
Yep.
Any additional questions for administration on this one?
I just have a statement. I think the decision is obvious here, but I think it highlights another issue of the 5 a.m. practices. I thought was just totally unreasonable. I mean, I understand why they did it, but I think it's unreasonable. Even if we had practice here in Monroe as a soccer team, I wouldn't want a regular thing starting at 5 a.m. And I think that we should have some rough guidelines and what's a reasonable time period. I mean, I understand that maybe there's a situation, you gotta leave at 5 a.m. to get up to Oshkosh for an event or something like that, but to have regular practice at 5 a.m., to me, it's just totally unreasonable.
Well, and that's not even in legal drive time for her with the probationary, correct? Yeah, I didn't think so.
I think we can give them that feedback, but again, they set those times and we
Sure.
don't, and they, if we want to be part of it or we don't.
Well, no, I'm not even just talking the hockey program, I'm talking everything. I mean, if our basketball team wanted to have practice at 4 a.m., I would want that,
I'm not
right?
aware of any other program that has that type of. But I hear what you're saying and I agree, but I just don't know that it's an issue for our locally controlled programs.
Well, I just want to put it out there. I just didn't, I think we should have some sort of guidelines. And if it's something earlier, get an exception or something, but
It probably shouldn't start earlier than 0 hour, right? I mean, we offer that, so.
what time is that? 7?
6:45, I believe.
Basketball team practice at some point at 6 a.m.? For at least a few
I'm
weeks?
sure, yeah, when they have 2-a-days, they start pretty early. I know in my basketball career, many years ago, it was a 6 a.m. practice, so potentially, yeah.
Definitely have an open gym. It's not practice.
Are these times, early morning set times, are they already laid out before the program, before someone joins the program, so they know like what's being
Hockey wasn't. Hockey, that was a switch.
But in our original schedule came out, there was no Sunday. I mean, AM practices. It was about 2-3 weeks in that they changed the schedule. And it gave us, that's when I came in and talked to you as
There were
well.
adjustments to the schedule. Yeah, and some of that's dictated by available ice time, and hockey's challenging in that regard, so certainly it put the family in a tough position.
I would make a motion to not renew our participation in the girls' hockey co-op with Lloyd Memorial for the next 2-year contract as recommended by Jeff Newcomer, Activities Director.
A second.
Motion by Dan and a second by Cheryl. By voice vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
We actually have to pick our children up from hockey.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you.
Thanks for coming. Okay, we're on to informational items. So boardsmanship and administration, anything from administration?
Nothing for me, other than one of our principals reminded me that it's School Board Awareness Month, which I wasn't aware of, but, so happy School Board Awareness Month. Thanks for all you guys doing, all of your support. I mean, you guys do a great job, and, you know, you keep us accountable and ask a lot of tough questions sometimes, but that's what we need, and we just want to say thank you for all you do, and we appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Have a cookie on Cindy.
All right, for boardsmanship, we do have one item in here. I'll note that Nicole Josephs has submitted paperwork to be a write-in for our spring election. So. Board of Education correspondence.
There's a piece of correspondence in your board packet from Carlson Detman Consulting, the group that's going to be leading the process for evaluating the admin and exempt staff wage comparisons. And so basically it's just outlining so that you understand down the road as they get further into the process, some of the questions and information are going to be coming back to you to help guide them to their final decisions as to recommendations for you. So they need to know what some of your target data is and things of that nature so that they can work through that.
Next items are committee reports. Go around. Dylan, anything from you?
Nope.
Dan?
I just want to mention that Jeff's not here tonight, but 2 weeks ago, we had the Girls Badger Conference Challenge, which is 8 basketball games, and unfortunately, they had to cancel some of the JVs, but we had a lot of people. I mean, I thought it went smooth, very smooth. We had 2 of our very own here that worked quite a bit. Terry was there, and Teresa, of course, really worked her butt off for United Way, where they get money for charity, and this year was United Way, so I thought that was great. And I thought Monroe put on a good tournament, and I didn't see any problems. There were a lot. Jeff, I'm sure, worked very hard when he was there at every game, and we had a lot of the same people: John King and Sarah Jacobson and Emily Bartles. I mean, there's a bunch of them that worked the whole tournament, and I'm a basketball junkie, so I went to 4 or 5 of them, but it went well, so kudos to the high school. If you could relay that to Jeff, please.
Carrie,
I have nothing.
Nikki,
Nope, nothing.
Teresa?
No, I was going to just say, if you could give a thank you, I have a formal thank you for the Student Senate and to the National Honor Society. Those kids came out in huge numbers last weekend and helped, and were just absolutely amazing. So during the Badger Challenge, they were fantastic.
She changes it.
Anything for
Now
you,
I
Terry?
have something. I just wanted to say, last week I was lucky enough to participate in the school board conferences over Milwaukee, and I thought it was a great 3 days. The sessions that we were able to choose were really interesting, a lot of great insight, talking to other schools that are going through some of the same pain points as us, but it was a great 3 days. I honestly enjoyed myself.
Excellent. Tim?
Just finance met this evening, went through December financials, but that's all I got for today.
Nothing.
Cheryl? All right, and along the line of Osby, just thanks to all the board members who took time out of their schedules and time off of work to go and do some professional development for board members. That was great. Liaison reports, anything from?
I have not heard, I didn't receive anything, so I don't know if there's anything from
I don't see anybody here from the press, so our next item is a closed session. So per Wisconsin statute 19.85, paren 1, paren C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, to wit, administrative contracts and leave of absence request, Wisconsin statute 19.85, paren 1, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, to wit, administrative contracts. We will return from closed into open, planning to take action, but if anybody would like to make that motion, I'd entertain it.
So moved.
Okay, second.
Bye,
Dan's
guys.
beating me every time.
Guys,
tonight.
hey, Katie, you got your phone?
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for that.
And that's at 8:42. Would you call the roll, please, Nikki?
Yep, Nikki, yes. Dan?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Terry? Yes. Teresa?
Yes.
Cheryl? Dylan?
Yes.
Bill? Tim?
Yes.
All right. We will.
Well,